Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am seriously excited about this one because we are diving into a completely fascinating, multidisciplinary investigation of one of history's absolute biggest, most enduring stories. We're going to look at ancient texts, apply the laws of hydrodynamic physics, and yeah, even touch on a bit of modern geopolitical espionage just to grasp the sheer scale of this account. It's an incredible journey, so let's just jump right in. Okay, let's dive into this. Could the most famous ship in human history have actually survived the ultimate cataclysm? That's the core question we're tackling today. Is this story just a really powerful metaphor, or does the structural and historical data from our sources point to an actual physical vessel that could truly weather a global disaster? So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the Great Flood myth. Second, the blueprints of the Ark. Third, the engineering and vessel stability. Fourth, the passengers and the voyage itself. And finally, number 5, the modern search on Mount Ararat. All right, starting with Section 1, the Great Flood Myth, a historical cataclysm. You know, the concept of a great flood isn't just in one book. It pops up in mythologies across so many different nations and cultures. For instance, in Vietnamese texts, it's known as Dai Hong Thuy. According to these ancient sources, this was a massive, catastrophic event triggered as divine judgment against humanity's extreme moral decay. And what's really fascinating here is the time frame. The sources place the arrival of the rain right around 2345 BC. The texts describe a society that was wiped out as being highly corrupt and violent, sure, but also shockingly advanced, capable of high-level math, astronomy, and even complex metallurgic engineering. Now, the chronology of this flood, as laid out in the Genesis text, is incredibly specific. It's basically a countdown. Noah was given a strict 7-day final warning before the skies just opened up. Then, 40 days and 40 nights of continuous torrential rain breaking forth from the skies and from the deep. The floodwaters surged to cover the earth for 150 days, rising 15 cubits, which is roughly 22 feet above the highest mountains. The total duration of this cataclysm, from the very first drop of rain until the earth was finally dry again, was 371 days. That's just over a full year. I mean, imagine being locked inside a wooden vessel for that long, with literally no end in sight. Moving on to Section 2, Blueprints of the Ark, a vessel for survival. So the construction of this massive vessel reportedly kicked off around 2465 BC. It was built from a super resilient resinous wood, often translated as gopher or cypress wood, and then sealed, inside and out, with a pitch called kafar. The dictated dimensions, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high. If we use a standard 1.5-foot cubit, that translates to 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. You'll notice that perfectly symmetrical 6-to-1 length-to-width ratio. Basically, it was shaped like a giant shoebox. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. This ship had no sails, it had no oars, and definitely no motor. It wasn't designed to be steered anywhere. It was engineered purely for floating and purely for survival. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the project. The Ark had an internal volume of just over 1.5 million cubic feet. To help you visualize that crazy number, that is the volumetric equivalent of 569 standard railroad stock cars. It was easily one of the largest timber structures ever conceived by humanity, requiring an estimated 10,000 axles of wood and boasting a massive carrying capacity spread across 3 entire interior decks. But here's a logical question for you. How on earth do you keep thousands of animals alive inside a sealed wooden box for a whole year? Well, the answer lies in something called the Tsohar, or central light well. Research models indicate that an opening right in the center of the roof could illuminate up to 70% of the internal space across all 3 decks. If they had just used standard perimeter windows along the outside, they would have lost 30% of their lighting, and those lower decks would have been suffocatingly pitch black. So this centralized system, it was an absolute stroke of genius for oxygen renewal and keeping everything inside alive. Which brings us to Section 3. Engineering and vessel stability, surviving the waves. Let's look at the actual physics here. Fully loaded, the Ark displaced an estimated 48.6 million pounds of water, giving it a draft of about 15 cubits, meaning exactly half of its height was submerged underwater. This created a highly effective, incredibly low metacenter. So say a violent wave struck the Ark and tilted it 31 degrees, a tilt so extreme that the top corner of the roof is literally touching the water. The opposing forces of buoyancy and gravity would instantly generate what engineers call a righting couple. Think of it exactly like one of those bottom-heavy punching bags that just bounces right back up no matter how hard you hit it. This hydrodynamic force automatically pushes the whole vessel back upright.
So, the crucial point is this. Even if the arc was pushed to a severe 60-degree angle by incredibly chaotic waves, the metacentric height remains positive. The engineering calculations show it would still right itself. In fact, you would have to turn the arc a full 90 degrees vertical for it to actually capsize. On top of that, its long axis would naturally align parallel to the predominant waves, acting as a streamlined body to minimize drag. Honestly, it was just an exceptionally stable design. All right, Section 4. The Passengers and Voyage. Surviving for a year. Now, the ancient texts point out a really specific ratio of animals brought on board. It actually wasn't simply 2 of every kind, like we so often hear. The instructions stated to bring 7 pairs of the clean animals and only 1 pair of the unclean animals. So why the imbalance? Well, the theological text explained that immediately after leaving the ark, an altar was built and some of those clean animals were sacrificed. If only 1 pair had been brought on board, sacrificing them would have instantly driven that entire species to extinction. So bringing 7 pairs ensured both the survival of the species and the provision for those future offerings. Makes sense, right?
Toward the end of the flood, 2 birds were released to check for dry land, a raven and a dove. And this serves as a really powerful metaphor in the texts. The raven, which was categorized as an unclean bird, fed on carrion. With countless dead animals floating in the waters out there, it found plenty of food and just never returned. The sources use this to represent the old, fleshly nature drawn to a fallen world. The dove, on the other hand, a clean bird, couldn't find a clean place to rest in all that devastation, so it returned, eventually bringing back a fresh olive leaf. It's a beautiful symbol of new life, peace, and a new nature seeking rest.
Finally, Section 5. The Search on Mount Ararat, the ultimate secret.
After drifting for an estimated 800 kilometers, the texts say the ark finally came to rest. Now, what's really interesting about this part of the story is that for some, this isn't just an ancient myth. It's an active, modern archaeological target. You see, over the past 2 centuries, multiple explorers and pilots have reported seeing the exact same thing, a massive, dark brown, shoebox-shaped wooden structure embedded high up in the glacial ice of Mount Ararat in Turkey. There are even artistic renderings out there based precisely on the detailed accounts of eyewitnesses like G. Hagobian.
But man, imagine actually trying to conduct an archaeological dig in those conditions. Mount Ararat is over 5,100 meters high, and it is incredibly treacherous. We're talking steep volcanic rock, deadly hidden crevasses, unpredictable avalanches, and brutal winter temperatures that literally plummet to minus 40 degrees Celsius. And then, you add the geopolitical instability to the mix. There were serious threats from terrorists in the 1990s and intense scrutiny from both the CIA and the KGB simply because of the mountain's strategic location. But honestly, the most chilling part of all is the bizarre pattern researchers have noted. Compelling photographic evidence taken by private individuals continually vanishes, and at least 1 key owner of photographic material was reportedly murdered. It's wild.
Which leaves us with a totally profound mystery to ponder today. If this monumental vessel, engineered to absolute hydrodynamic perfection and supposedly capable of surviving the greatest cataclysm in Earth's history, truly sits preserved beneath centuries of glacial ice, why does the definitive proof continually remain so elusive? Is it merely a myth we just refuse to let go of? Or is Mount Ararat guarding a secret that could fundamentally change human history forever? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope it gave you something incredible to think about.